I want to bring in former National Security Advisor during President Trump's first term, Ambassador John Bolton. It's great to have you on the program. Ambassador, what do you make of the very different ways these two situations were handled?
Well, I think there are serious repercussions from the Signal group chat, and the signal that, no pun intended, it sends to the people in the intelligence community, Homeland Security, as your piece just indicated, the defense community, the State Department, and other agencies, that if people at the top are held to a different standard, it has a corrosive effect on morale and performance below. And we've already had some indication of that happening. We don't know everything about the Signal issue, to be sure. We don't know whether this was the first time or whether this has been going on for 2 months. But it's a fact that people at the top have to set a leadership example, and I don't think that's happening here. Now, that said, I don't think Trump is going to do anything about it because he doesn't feel the heat personally yet, and that's what matters to him.
But as you know, there are members of the Senate, bipartisan members of the Senate, who are calling for an investigation. Help folks to understand who are not deeply steeped, Ambassador, in the national security community or protocols, why this has raised so many concerns and why there is a bipartisan call to get to the bottom of what we don't know about this.
Well, the U.S. government over the years has gone to extraordinary lengths in terms of money and resources to build what I think is the world's most secure telecommunications system. And the purpose of that system is to use it in order to keep sensitive matters out of the wrong hands, like, with all due respect, journalists who shouldn't be added to the chain. And this is done not because you're parsing the classification level of every sentence that people write or utter over this system, but precisely so you have the freedom to range up and down the classification change with no fear that if it fell into, that it won't fall into the wrong hands. So to me, when I first heard the story, frankly, I just found it incomprehensible that anybody would walk away from a system that's that expensive and that good to take up a commercial app, which nobody really knows how well encrypted it is or who may have de-encrypted it already. And one of the questions, that's why knowing whether this is the first time this happened or whether this reflects a pattern throughout the first 2 months of the Trump administration, that I think is very important in deciding what the next steps are in terms of consequences for the people on that chat group, including the highest ranking of all, the Vice President of the United States.
Well, that leads me to the question, if this is causing consternation for people within that community, and as we saw, quick action was taken against a career DHS employee who may never work in any kind of a job that requires a security clearance again. What should happen here? Should someone be held culpable, and is it clear who that might be?
Yeah, look, I think we need to have more information. And being a Justice Department alumnus myself, I don't want to come to premature conclusions. But that's why I think the Attorney General's comments yesterday or the day before, just saying there's nothing here, it's not classified, we're not going to look into it, are a big mistake. And they do send the wrong signal. And I might say not only to government employees in the secure world, but to our friends and allies around the world who now have to doubt that they can communicate with the highest levels of our government and not ultimately read about it in the Atlantic magazine.
I don't know if you were able to see it just a short time ago. We saw the Vice President and Usha Vance, who have arrived in Greenland, and they're at a base there, a U.S. base. And it comes as the president is escalating his calls to take over the island. In fact, he just talked about it at the White House. Let me play that for you. Again, just happening minutes ago.
We need Greenland, very importantly, for international security. We have to have Greenland. It's not a question of, do you think we can do without it? We can't. If you look at Greenland right now, if you look at the waterways, you have Chinese and Russian ships all over the place. And we're not going to be able to do that. We're not relying on Denmark or anybody else to take care of that situation. And we're not talking about peace for the United States. We're talking about world peace.
And he went on to say, Ambassador, I think Denmark understands it. I think the European Union understands it. They may understand the importance of Greenland. Not so that the folks in Greenland and in Denmark believe it's okay for the president of the United States to be talking about taking over control of Greenland. I wonder what you make of all of this. First of all, the national security importance, but also the idea that the president wants to take control.
Right. Well, Donald Trump didn't discover the importance of Greenland to the United States. Secretary of State William Seward made the first effort to buy Greenland in 1868 after successfully buying Alaska from Russia. I would be happy to take sovereignty over Greenland if that were agreed to by Denmark and the Greenlanders. It doesn't look like that's in prospect. What's critical here is not sovereignty, it's security. And if people would stop talking about it, I think we could negotiate something that would be perfectly acceptable to everybody, perhaps using that very famous treaty from 1951, the U.S.-Danish Defense of Greenland Treaty. There's a lot there to build on. You know, when the president of the United States...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ambassador, but does the president pushing something continually that they have made clear, Greenland has made clear, Denmark has made clear, the EU has made clear, is not going to happen from their perspective? Does that make it harder to get to the point you're talking about, which is to increase national security and global security?
It absolutely makes it harder to achieve, because when you push and indeed slap publicly democratically elected leaders, whether in Copenhagen or Nuuk, the capital of Greenland, it pushes them into a corner. They're not going to be shoved around just because Donald Trump wants it. The language that he uses is completely substitutable for the language Vladimir Putin uses about Ukraine. We need it for our national security, or Xi Jinping uses about Taiwan. This is a free gift to these authoritarian leaders and their aggressive desires. There's no understating the strategic importance of Greenland, but the way to get it is to act like a responsible ally dealing with allies that we've built up trust and good faith with over decades, and not ripping the North Atlantic Alliance apart. This is what the Trump administration has been doing, in effect, over the last 2 months.
Ambassador John Bolton, thank you.